Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we'll be taking a look back at the past weekend of Overwatch League action, focusing on the matches that we saw on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then tomorrow you'll get a video where I talk about what happened on Sunday, so I can dive full into those matches and talk about them. So let's real quickly throw out my picks from this past weekend, and you can see them here. 1-1 in the big picks. 9-5 overall is a pretty tough one this weekend. A lot of upsets, a lot of games that did not go the way I expected to. So let's jump in and let's talk about them. And we're going to start with the Western region. On Thursday, the Atlanta Reign completely obliterated the London Spitfire. No real surprise there. There were a couple moments, if I remember correctly, on Ilios that were pretty close. But outside of that, it was a very one-sided series. The Atlanta Reign looked to be one of the best teams in the Overwatch League right now. Obviously, we'll talk about what happened on Sunday tomorrow, but they are still looking very, very strong. They look better and better and better as the season progresses. They are one of the teams that I think really is only getting better when it matters, and they're getting better and better and better as we reach the end. So they're definitely a scary team going into the playoffs, a team I'll be looking out for. So huge win for the Reign, big weekend for them. But let's move on to the surprising match from Thursday, which is the Boston Uprising taking a 3-0 win over the Houston Outlaws. It was a rough week for the Outlaws. This was the game that they needed to win. They were 2-0 on the stage. They had a Battle for Texas match the next day. This was the game they had to win. This was the easy game you have to win. And they just didn't do it. The Uprising were running, kind of weird composition, stuff that you wouldn't normally see. They were running a lot of Genji, which I think the Outlaws just were not ready for. And the Outlaws just got completely outplayed. And this is where the fear that the Outlaws and their tough second half schedule really starts rearing its ugly head. Because they're fallen now. They were a one-loss team in the regular season. They lose to the Uprising. They have a tough match against the Fuel the next day. You feel like this may be the Outlaws falling behind the likes of the Shock. And by record, potentially falling behind the Dallas Fuel, which would, even though the Dallas Fuel have more points, more points from their tournament appearances, the fact that the Outlaws had the better record was kind of the one thing that was keeping them afloat and keeping them kind of competitive. But this is a rough loss for them. Huge props to the Outlaws, the Uprising, for being able to pull this one off. And, I really don't know what else to say other than it was just not a good match from the Outlaws. And I would like to see more from them in the future, because this one really took a lot of my confidence in this Outlaws team away. Let's move on to Friday. Washington Justice, huge win over the London Spitfire. Justice looked to be getting back into that form we saw from them early in the season when they took on the Dallas Fuel and beat them, and they beat some of those teams early on in the season. Had that strong melee performance. Looking good from them. Obviously, Spitfire, pretty weak team. A lot of people out there kind of thought this game could be a little close. Or maybe not a lot of people. There were people out there talking about how this game could be close. This could be a close series, but ultimately, it was a pretty one-sided affair with the Justice taking this one. Second match on Friday was the LA Gladiators taking on the Toronto Defiant. Another one that shouldn't have really been super close. I think it was a 3-0 in favor of the Gladiators. Defiant maybe took a map, but I think it was a 3-0. Gladiators look really good. I still think they look really strong. I think the Defiant have definitely improved, and they look like a team that is getting there, is kind of at a point where they are starting to look pretty good. But they're just not at the same level of the Gladiators, who I think are still one of the best teams in the Western region. I still think they're an elite team. They're looking to be competing at the highest level. And so when you go up against a team like that, it's very difficult to find a win. So go down for the Gladiators. They did a pretty good job all tournament. Obviously, struggled at times. Obviously, they had the loss to the Eternal. They barely beat the Shock. We'll talk about their match on Saturday. So it was not an awful look, but the Gladiators are a team that I think they haven't quite reached the level where you want them to reach, where you feel like they are a really good, dominant level team. But they still look good, and they've still put up really strong performances. And so I think this is a team that definitely will be looking for a playoff spot come the end of the season. And we'll just have to see what happens when we get there. Let's move on to my first big pick, though. Dallas Fuel, Houston Outlaws, Battle for Texas. What a series it was. It was quite a one-sided affair for the Dallas Fuel, playing in front of their home fans. It was awesome to see the Dallas fans in person, being able to watch the game. Obviously made that whole video on Friday talking about whether or not that could be kind of like the format of the future, where teams kind of have home events that aren't home stands. And I still think that would be a great idea, and I still stand by that, and I stand by it especially more after what I saw during the series, because it was incredible. It was a really, really amazing thing to see, and so I'm hoping we get more stuff like that in the future. And of course, if you're a Dallas fan, you got to be happy being able to get a win over your in-state rivals. Definitely, this rivalry kind of started pretty strong and has just kind of progressively gone weaker and weaker and weaker over the season, while the Dallas Fuel have stayed pretty consistently strong. So it's just, well, I mean, I guess you could argue they've gotten stronger as well, but you get the idea, right? This rivalry is kind of weakening again, and it really is just the Dallas Fuels at this point in time. So bad weekend for the Outlaws. Rough from them. Definitely one of the most disappointing teams this weekend, though we got another team I'll talk about in a little bit who arguably even more disappointing, but the Outlaws, you kind of expected them to lose this series to the Fuel, but they had to get this one. I mean, they needed to get the one against the Uprising. They lose that one. Once you go up against the Fuel at that one time, you're kind of doomed. So rough from them. They miss out on qualifying for the Summer Showdown, and pretty rough from that one. Moving on to Saturday, the Atlanta Reign took on the Boston Uprising. Boston Uprising obviously feeling pretty good after their win over the Outlaws, but the Atlanta Reign laughed at them. They made fun of them, they mocked them, and they just completely rolled over them. It was not even close. Reign just dismantled the Uprising. So the Uprising are a team right now that I think look good, but they are definitely not a team that is going to be competing consistently with a lot of the teams in the Western region, right? They can beat some of the teams that are good, but you don't get the feeling they're going to be a team that wins a tournament, goes to Hawaii anytime soon. They have the pieces in place, they have the foundations to kind of build a strong roster, especially going forward, but they definitely need some more pieces. They definitely need to add a couple things. I think a DPS player is huge for this team. I think another DPS player would be really good, someone who can play that Tracer pretty strong, and I think that would be a big boost for this team. I think Stand 1's good. I don't know if I think Stand 1 is good enough to be kind of an elite level main tank, but I think that this was still a good month for the Uprising. Obviously getting the win over the Outlaws, not much better you can do than that, so good for them, and I think that it was a very, very, very strong performance out of them. And the Reign, they just look really good, and I think that they are really solidifying themselves as that second best team in the Western region. It's hard to say you're better than Dallas, but they are they're doing what they can to try to get there. Speaking of Dallas, they beat the Toronto Defiant. It was a 3-1 series. Defiant winning the third map. I don't remember what it was. And then the Fuel coming out on the fourth map, just completely rolling over them and not caring at all about the Defiant. So good for the Fuel. I think the Fuel have looked very strong. I think the Fuel have been a team that have been super successful so far this season. I think they look strong. Still, obviously, nothing's really slowing them down right now. So I'll be interested to see what happens with this team in the Summer Showdown. A little spoiler, I guess, but I think we all knew they would make it there. I'm curious to see what happens. Obviously, at this point in time with the Fuel, the only thing I really care about is when is Pine able to play? When will they be able to get him into the country? And when he does, how will they look? That's really what I'm kind of curious about with this Fuel team. But good win for them. About what you expect. So all in all, pretty good stuff coming out from them. Final match from the Western region for the weekend was the Washington Justice taking on the Los Angeles Gladiators. And this is a great series. I predicted this one would be a 3-2 in favor of the Gladiators. And while the series was a 3-2, it was in favor of the Justice. This weekend was very good for the Justice. We'll talk about them when we get to their Summer Showdown stuff tomorrow. But they looked very, very good. And I think that they are really finally looking like they're clicking. I still have some issues with this Justice team. I don't think they're perfect. I don't think they're flawless. I still think they have issues with tempo. I still think they have issues with kind of making the right decisions. I think sometimes they play comps that don't really work. And they play them for a little bit too long, and then they kind of fall flat as a result. But, I still think they are a very good team, and I think that we are only seeing them kind of getting better than anything else, right? There's teams like the Outlaws where I feel like they're getting weaker as the season progresses. Or maybe not so much they're getting weaker, but the opponent around them is getting better at a much faster rate. And maybe some of that is because they kind of got an early start scrimming, so they kind of got their stuff kind of together early on. But as the season has progressed and as the patches have changed and as teams have been able to develop more synergy, they've kind of fallen behind a bit. The Justice, though, I think are getting better at the right time. It hopes to be good early, obviously. It's difficult to find success if you're just bad at the beginning of the season. You look at a team like the Reign, who started 1-3, right? They're still, despite the fact that they feel like the second best team in the Western region, in the Western region standings, they're 6th. Like, they're barely scratching the surface of your top level teams. So obviously any additional points they get from like tournaments, that helps. But the Justice are a team who are getting better. They're in 5th in the Western region. They look like they're getting better. They look like they're working out some of those issues that we've seen from them. I think Mag is getting back to that level of play we saw from him back in the May Melee. His Reinhardt's looking much improved. So this is a really interesting series. This is a great series. I honestly was I thought the series would be close or should be close, but part of me was like, I don't know, man. The Justice might just drop the ball and just look awful. But they didn't. They looked really good, and they managed to pull off the win. I saw some stat that this was their first Map 5 victory since, 2019 at some point. I don't even remember when it was. Maybe even, early 2020. But, they didn't win a Map 5 in a long time, and they finally get a nice Map 5 win. So, nice win for the Justice. Very, very happy for them. I'm really a big fan of the way this Justice team has been playing the recent part of the season. So, all in all, good things from me. Let's jump on over to the Eastern region. Shanghai Homestand was this weekend. First match over there was my big pick game. This is from Friday. The Hangzhou Spark took on the NYXL. This was a 3-2 win for the Hangzhou Spark, finally breaking their poor performances against the NYXL. New York this season is one of the most difficult teams to place, but I think that with Kalios, they have a noticeable improvement in their synergy. It's been one weekend, so we'll see what happens over time, but I think that they do definitely have a chance to be pretty good as we go into the Countdown Cup. I don't think they're a team that are going to make the playoffs at the end of the season. I don't think they're that good. But I thought the addition of Kalios helped them a lot. But the Hangzhou Spark are still a really good team. They have their flaws. They're not a perfect team, but they did pretty well to find some success in the series. Gushui played really, really well, which when doesn't he? Let's be honest. Shai played very well. On the NYXL side, Guangbong played very well, especially on Junkertown. He looked absurdly good. So this is an interesting series. This is a fun series. This is a good one. Went down to the wire, but ultimately the Hangzhou Spark were able to pull it off, find the dub, and end their losing streak against the NYXL, which for them is pretty good since they need to get those regular season standings up if they want a shot at playoffs come the end of the season. Second match from Friday was the Chengdu Hunters taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. I thought the Fusion win the series. They got reverse swept by the Chengdu Hunters. Oh, Philly, 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 Philly. You never cease to disappoint every person who believes in you. This was definitely something that wasn't completely unexpected. The Philadelphia Fusion organization, I believe, as a coach, I don't remember which one exactly. It was probably Christopher. He basically said, when we start reintegrating players in this roster, it's gonna take a little bit of time before we get to our peak, but we'll still be a really good team. I just don't think this iteration of the Fusion roster is what they thought it would be. Obviously, not having Poco hurts a lot. We didn't see any Shockwave this weekend, which is just blasphemous to me. I think that Shockwave should be playing. Hunters look good, though. I think that they've found compositions that work. I was a little bit worried about them with Late Young taking over full time. I thought that he was only really super impressive on the Zarya. He proved me wrong. Those Diva looked pretty good this weekend. So it's an interesting matchup. But good for the Hunters. They've started to kind of get better again late in this stage and kind of making a late season run, which is good for them. Hopefully, we see more from the Hunters in the future. We see them perform at a high level. But really, for me, the disappointment is the Fusion. They were up 2-0 and they just dropped the ball. And this should have been a series win for them. And they just couldn't capitalize on it. And, bad luck from them. Final match on Friday was the Shanghai Dragons against the LA Valiant. I didn't watch this series because I didn't care enough about it. I heard that the first map was pretty close and the Valiant almost took it off the Dragons. But they didn't. So who cares? Dragons won the series 3-0. Valiant still look like the weakest team in the league. Let's move on. Saturday, the NYXL took on the Philadelphia Fusion. And what do you know? I had both NYXL predictions wrong this weekend. They beat the Philly Fusion 3-1. The Fusion, as I said when I was talking about the Outlaws, there will be a team I was talking about, an arguably more disappointing weekend. The Fusion are the team to me. These are two games they should have won, I think. I think they were, on paper, the stronger team. And they couldn't do it. They fell to the Hunters in a reverse sweep. They fell to the NYXL in a series that wasn't particularly close. So, yeah, I'm a little concerned about the Fusion. I think a lot of people have been concerned about them because they've been dropping series all over the place this season. But I'm certainly not looking at this Fusion roster and feeling the most confident in it. So, yeah. Good on the NYXL, though. Kalios continuing to look pretty good. I actually think he looked better in the series against the Spark and did in the series against the Fusion. But I thought he looked good in both of them. I might be getting it mixed up with the game on Sunday, but I remember Kalios pulling some more like Zarya and stuff out, as opposed to the Diva, which he played most of the time against the Spark. And while this game didn't qualify New York for a spot in the Summer Showdown regional knockouts, it made it pretty likely they would, because they just needed the Dragons to beat the Spark, which most people would expect to happen. So, good win for the NYXL. They're a team that every time I feel like I'm like it's over for them. When they lost to the Spark, I was ready to go on this whole thing about how the NYXL season is over. They have no chance, no future, no shot. And I mean, I still think that's mostly true. I still think their season's pretty much over. Their Countdown Cup schedule's pretty hard. But I thought that it was basically like me gonna say like this team is really just, they can't get it together. But they did. And while I don't think they're good enough to make it far in the playoffs, you know, 3 teams make it. And do I think they could realistically win a series of matches if they have to take on a team like the Fusion or the Spark or the Hunters? Yeah, I think they've shown that they have that ability to do that. I don't know how many teams from the APAC region play in those games. I would assume it's 4, because 3 seems like a weird number, so I would assume it's the 3, 4, 5, and 6. They seem pretty likely to lock up one of those spots. Probably the 6, but we'll see. I don't know what it is. I don't think they've fully announced it yet, so I'll wait and see. But do I think they have what it takes to potentially take one of those spots? I do. I think that they've shown that to me, so we'll just keep following them. As long as Flora keeps doing what he wants to do and Jonak keeps just having his Herculean efforts, I think this NYXL team is potential underdogs to make the playoffs, though I don't think they'd have much success if they did make it. LA Valiant versus Chengdu Hunters. Once again, LA Valiant are the LA Valiant. Not really much to talk about there. Chengdu Hunters win that one and put themselves in pretty good position going into the Summer Showdown, so good for them. Final match I want to talk about for this weekend is the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Shanghai Dragons, which is a series that went in the favor of the Dragons, 3-1. I think that this is a matchup that has been one of the toughest for the Dragons this season. Obviously, it was a 3-0 for the Spark the last time they played. It was a 3-2 in favor of the Dragons the first time they played the season. So it's been a pretty close series between these teams so far this season. But this one went the way of the Dragons, who just keep looking really, really, really good. They still, to me, look like the best team in the Overwatch League. Some of that might just be a bit of them not having to face the same level of competition that the Dallas Fuel do in the Western region, but I think Shanghai look really good. I think their composition with Sombra and Tracer or whatever they want to run, really, they can run anything, just looks too good. And I'll be interested to see what happens, though, going forward. But that's it for the matches that took place for the qualifiers. Like I said, I'll talk about the regional knockouts in a video tomorrow, so that is it for today. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on any of the matches I talked about today, and stay tuned for the video tomorrow. But that is all from me for today. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more like it in the future. I'm going to get out of here. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.